we're back. Welcome to Season 2 of Generation Aggie, a podcast dedicated to connecting with Aggie alumni. I'm Julliet Hill, a fourth-year communication major, streamer, and your host. This season, I'll talk with a diverse and fun group of alumni as they share their stories from their time at UC Davis and after graduation. I'm excited for this season's lineup of guests, as some I've admired for a long time, and now I get to share their stories. Let's welcome our next guest. Welcome back to our next episode of Generation Aggie. I'm Julliet Hill, a fourth-year communication major, social media intern, and your host of this season. Today marks our final episode of Season 2, and I'm joined by Professor Ruiz. Dr. Jeanette Ruiz graduated from UC Davis in 1997 with her undergraduate degree, and then again in 2015 with her PhD, and she has been teaching at UC Davis for 10 plus years now. Dr. Ruiz, I'm so excited to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to see you again.
I'm so excited to have you. Would you mind just telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Again, Jeanette Ruiz. I'm an assistant professor of teaching in the Department of Communication, and very excited to be there because it feels like home. But sometimes coming home is a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
So
Amazing. So we're just going to jump right into these questions. So what was your major when you were at UC Davis, and are you working in that field now? I think we addressed that a little bit. But
yes. And interestingly enough, I started out as a psych major.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the first year as a psych major and then decided, I don't know. And I honestly cannot recall how I ended up in communication. I think I took a class, really liked it, and just stuck with it because at the time I thought I was going to go into law.
Oh, okay.
And at the time it was rhetoric and communication, and so a lot of classes about argumentation and how to form messaging around specific persuasive strategies. So I thought it would be key. Mm-hmm. But then I think in junior year I decided, I don't know about law. I think I just want to get out into the workforce, be self-sufficient, not be a burden on the family, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And, of course, being a comm major, everyone says, oh, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that?
Yes.
And I'm fairly old, so in my day, you walked into the Internship and Career Center and put your resume into little file folders, and I just stuck mine in every single one. Mm-hmm. And anything that could remotely have me in an office, because I figured we're pretty versatile as comm major, so we'll see. Mm-hmm. Was lucky I got quite a few interviews and ended up in a management training program that I disliked very much, but only spent a short time there and quickly moved into public relations, which I loved. Mm-hmm. And then fell into teaching quite by accident.
Yep. I feel like your journey is like similar to a lot of students where you start off somewhere and then take that one class that sort of switches your whole trajectory and you find like your passion. So
right.
It's exciting to hear that. So what is your favorite part of your job right now?
Absolutely the students. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds so cliche, but it really is. Because I worked in industry for about almost 10 years before coming back to academia, I've had opportunities to leave. Mm-hmm. So where people say, do you want to come back and do some work with us? And it's tempting. The money's great. The hours are great. Mm-hmm. The opportunities are fantastic. But then something ends up happening where I completely reconsider, and it usually has to do with a student. Mm-hmm. So the most recent one, I had a student who said to me, you are the only faculty member in this department that looks like me. Mm-hmm. And I thought, like, okay, guess I'm not leaving.
Tearjerker.
Right, absolutely. And also, as I share with my classes, I'm a first-gen student. Mm-hmm. And so I recognize that that's playing a game you don't understand. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't changed at all these decades later. Mm-hmm. So if I can help some students kind of navigate that in this role, then that's the best part.
Beautifully said. I'm pulling on the heartstrings now. So I guess that sort of answers this question. Do you think you'll stay in this area of work or eventually shift to something else? You said you've been tempted before.
I have. But I'm thinking that potentially, maybe in the future, I'll have an opportunity to use some of that skill set that I gained in corporate within the university. So something that allows me to still be in touch with the students, but that I could help move the system forward to being more equitable and inclusive, rather than just at the direct student level.
That's exciting work, and
it is.
Hopefully you can make that shift one day.
We will see. We
will
see.
Okay, so we already answered the question, did you ever change your major? Communication, stuck with it.
Stuck with it.
Yes. So what was your experience as a first-gen student at UC Davis? You just mentioned that that's a big reason why you're still here. So what was that like for you?
Interestingly enough, at the time, it wasn't a thing because nobody talked about it. Nobody talked about being first gen. So it wasn't something you discussed. There were no T-shirts or mugs, or there was no branding around that. And so you really did navigate completely on your own. The way I describe it now is really how it was for me then. It's kind of like if someone says, hey, want to play Monopoly? But you have no clue that when you pass go, you get $200. And so you don't work towards passing go because you don't know that's the goal. So I never went to office hours. Until one professor said, hey, I'd like you to stop by. And I thought it was like an appointment. So I went, and he made me really comfortable, and we talked about stuff outside of the class, and it was really great. And I still have a relationship with that faculty member to this day as a result. But I assumed as a first-gen student that you didn't go to office hours because that meant you were doing something wrong and that I was bothering the professor. So little things like that. I regret not being more involved on campus as an undergrad because I was so focused on getting done as quickly as possible, to not be, again, financial burden, right? And just completely focused on the grades. Well, as you know, a holistic approach is so much better. And so I think had I had someone to say, by the way, were you familiar with this resource? Or by the way, this is the expectation. I think it would have gone a lot more smoothly than it did.
There's been a lot of change since you were a student in that regard, which is good to see that they're making progress in trying to show that we have those resources.
So yes and no.
Yes.
So yes, in that I think people are more comfortable saying, yes, I'm a first-gen student, I don't understand these things. But I think there are still so many students who don't get the message, are still ashamed of not understanding, are still have a feeling of not belonging. I remember thinking, as a first gen, like, do I really belong here? Did they make a mistake? I was doing well in my classes, so that wasn't the case. But I distinctly remember sitting in an English class, and I don't remember the text we were reading, and a student raises their hand and says, oh, well, when my family was in Egypt last year. And I went, wow, right? But that was the standard. And here I was like barely made it out of, Northern California, and realizing that the stakes were so high, but the playing field was not even at all. So reading about a place and visiting a place and being enmeshed in a place are totally different. And so those are the kinds of things that students are up against on a regular basis with their peers. And then with faculty, we sometimes get tunnel vision too about this student manages to do X, Y, and Z without an issue, so why can't you? But not understanding that it's a totally different playing field for someone who doesn't have the support network or the understanding, again, of really how to play that game efficiently.
Absolutely. Well, then I'm glad we have someone like you in our corner to remind other people of that. What made you pursue your doctorate and come back to UC Davis? I know this is a little bit, we were just talking about this earlier.
So it's actually, I didn't intend to at all. I never saw myself in academia full-time. I didn't see myself as faculty ever. So first-gen faculty, of course, too, it has its own obstacles and challenges. But it was a vanity degree, really. I was working. I really enjoyed my job. I loved the people I worked with, but just felt like I could understand things a little bit better. So I went back for a master's degree that I did at Sac State, which was a great program, and immediately was asked if I could teach a class for them. And thought, yeah, I could absolutely do that. It was in the evenings, and it was a small class, and it was on business communication, and I fell in love immediately with the students. And then I thought, maybe this is something I could do because I could take what I've learned and share my advice with a larger group of people who could then go on and build their own careers and make their own changes, positive changes, hopefully, in the world. And so I thought, I'll just finish this. I'll see if I can teach. And that's really what the end goal was. But then I was asked to, so again, totally serendipitous, but I ended up teaching a class for someone here over the summer. And I met the chair of the department at that time who was putting together the PhD program for the first time for communication and said, hey, I've looked at your research. I think you should apply. If you make it in through a blind application process, great. And I thought, okay, why not, right? I like to learn. We'll keep this going. And I said, but when I'm done, I just want to teach. He said, yeah. So, oh my goodness, right away, feet first into the fire. It was like, but it was a fantastic experience. And they did let me continue to teach as a TA. And they haven't been able to get rid of me since.
I love it. You are, I must confess, probably my favorite professor that I've had here. And
you're so sweet.
Your course in race and media that I took last spring, I tell people, I recommend it all the time, and I tell people it was the course that got me excited about learning again. Okay. I hadn't been excited about learning in a long time, and so taking that with you made me very excited to be at Davis, and it reminded me why I'm at college, why I'm at the university level. So
thank
you for that.
That was a rough, wonky one since you were reworking it.
Yes, I loved it. So you teach a lot of different classes at UC Davis, that one I just mentioned. What do you think is your favorite to teach or your favorite subject matter?
I love the race and media class because it's actually very challenging to teach since, as you know, having had me, I'm very opinionated. But as a result of being very opinionated, I want my students to be very opinionated. But I want those opinions to come from a place of having an understanding of where those opinions come from and perhaps how those opinions can be challenged a little bit. And I like the challenge too. But we seem to have moved into a little bit of an environment where people don't like the discomfort. And for me as an undergrad, that was the most exciting thing, was the discomfort. I was coming into a place where everybody was so different from me, had grown up very different from me, and had different perceptions about what life was about and how it should go. And that was exciting. And I feel like we've lost that a little bit because people are afraid to be honest, again, really don't do well with discomfort. And so that's a really challenging course for me because I worry that I'll get students to a place, or a few at least, to a place where they're so uncomfortable that they might shut down. So it's like a really interesting song and dance there. So I do like that one for that reason. And then I love saying this, but I love the 102 class, which is empirical research methods. Because I hated that class as an undergrad.
I was gonna say, I think the worst class I took here.
It was the only class I didn't ace as an undergrad in the communication department, and it left this like searing impression in my brain. But now it's another challenge for me to get students to understand that while they might not become researchers, it's still really important to understand how research happens and how the results impact us as consumers and as citizens. So we're largely impacted by these ideas that are published and how publication works. So I like to do that a little bit, I think sort of as, what's the word? Not a redemption, if you will, from my time as an undergrad, but also realizing that it can be better if we focus the subject matter in a way that's more pertinent to the students.
And that's, I feel like, the most important part of teaching anything at this level is making sure that we know how it applies to what our world, because that's our next step. Is there's more school if you'd like there to be, but this can be the final step for a lot of people.
Exactly. And so can we make it applicable for the student, perhaps in a role coming up for them, or even just applicable, as I said, as just a citizen of the world?
Absolutely. So we're going to switch to some different speed of questions. What was your favorite spot on campus when you were here? You were here two separate times as a student and then now as faculty. So
I've always loved the Coho, as an undergrad, as a grad student, as faculty. I love the hub of it, the students milling about. Coffee's always good. The food choices, you run into all kinds of folks running through there for one reason or another. So that's always been a nice space. Of course, the Arboretum, that's a lovely space. As a grad student, I spent a lot of time at the ARC that I didn't do as an undergrad, although when I was an undergrad, the ARC didn't look like it does now. So
our
it's
very prestigious gym.
Oh, quite fantastic.
Yes.
And I do wish more students did our museum spaces. We have some amazing spaces on campus that we miss. So I like to cruise through there and see what they have.
You took us there during one of our...
the Minetti Shrum.
Yes, during our race and media course. And that was a really exciting opportunity because, like you said, we don't take advantage of it. And it introduced me to a lot of things that I'd never heard of, never seen of in that artistic form. So.
Right. And I don't think a lot of students realize it's free to them and that we have so many on campus, too, that have different perspectives, different ideas, and different... types of art. So really exciting stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we're going to jump around here. What do you think was your best memory of UC Davis?
Oh, that's rough.
There's a lot.
There is a lot. Honestly, I'll have to say it was the day I realized I was totally in a different element. It was a class that, again, it's interesting what you recall. I cannot remember what the class was. I tell this story often to my students. They brought in, whoever the faculty member was, brought in a group of sex workers who were looking to be unionized. And I remember just that blowing my mind that for several different reasons. I think I sat there with my mouth open the entire time that this discussion was taking place. They were really open with questions. And I remember thinking, where else would I have had an opportunity to meet these folks, had an opportunity to ask questions, had an opportunity to share space with them, and get a better understanding of something I would have never touched, in a way that I was able to. I would imagine, this is what I'm talking about now, that would be super uncomfortable for a lot of students now. And so I think that's been an interesting shift. But that's one of my absolute favorite moments at Davis, that I had an opportunity, whole separate subset of the world that I would have, up to that point, had no initial contact with.
Those memories that push you out of your comfort zone. Yes. I sort of think that's where we learn, is in those moments of discomfort.
Yes, absolutely.
And so for our final question to wrap it up, what advice would you give to someone that's considering UC Davis? You're a diehard Aggie at this point. So
I think that I should have known better. I grew up in the area, but it is a more quiet space. And I think students who are not familiar with the area sometimes struggle with that. But it is so close to more loud spaces, if you will, if that's what you'd like to do. I think for the most part, people are very friendly here because it's a small community. And I know that the Davis community really embraces the students. And so that's really nice. It feels very safe, even though, I mean, it's still life in real world, right? So we have to be careful. But there's a lot of commitment to improving students' lives at UCD in a way that isn't always so obvious at other places. And I feel like it's achievable and accessible here in a way that isn't at other places. So I do like that. It's an enormous campus with a lot of opportunities that sometimes I think get missed because we're just the little sister school. But we're not so little anymore, and we're not so sisterish anymore.
I would agree completely. We're taking our name back.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, telling your story, and for our final episode coming on. What a better way to end it with my favorite professor.
Thank you. It's so great to see you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and go Ags.